Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drayhon, back once again with another Dungeons & Dragons video. Today we are talking about Mindflayers, known in Undercommon as Illithidae. Now, the Mindflayers are a very interesting race. They are one of the greatest villains in all of Dungeons & Dragons, next to, of course, Tiamat and Asmodeus. And we actually have quite a few different Mind Flayer races. The Illithidae, the Ahun, the Gnome Ceremorphs, the Vampiric Mind Flayers that came out in Van Richten's guide, and the Mind Witness, a Ceremorph that was created by putting a Mind Flayer tadpole into a beholder. However, I feel that this is not enough. I feel there should be more Mind Flayer creations. And there are, in fact, more Mind Flayer creations in earlier editions. There are the Lizard Folk Illithid, which I can't remember what they were exactly called. I prefer to call them Illithid lizards because it's hilarious to say that. The Ucheron, which is a jewel with a Mind Flayer tadpole stuck in its brain. The Ropers that undergo Ceremorphosis, which I think they were called Uferon? I don't remember, but they were crazy. Their tentacles can reach up to 15 feet. And the Mars Gricken, which is what happens when a Mind Flayer tadpole and some form of ritual is performed on a deep gnome, because deep gnomes are normally immune to Ceremorphosis. And there's also one more. The most powerful Illithid creation. The Brain Stealer Dragon. I want these in Dungeons & Dragons. I don't know why they have not released content for them yet. I hope they do soon, because I want these in my campaign. They are just that good. Now, other YouTubers have already covered the Ceremorphs and other Illithid creations, so I won't cover them in this video. But I do want to talk quickly about a supplement called Zerkarus Guide to Ceremorphosis. This is a homebrew supplement that I found, and it provides the stat blocks for those different Illithids that I have already mentioned, including templates for your own Ceremorph creations. So you can have a Ceremorph template, an Illithid template, an Illithidae template, a Brain Stealer Dragon template, and most importantly, one of the greatest things to come out of this supplement is the Illithid player race. For those players of yours that want a little more of a challenge from their player characters. With these templates, you can put a Mind Flayer tadpole into just about anything now. You can create a Ceremorph that I forgot to mention, which is the Euantethelid, which look very similar to the image I have on the left, but they have tentacles instead of arms, which are pretty menacing, if you ask me. But you can also use the Ceremorph template on, say, a Harpy to have yourself a winged Illithid. Additionally, it is said that Illithids don't like sunlight. However, their stat blocks say nothing about this. So you could incorporate this weakness by using a Drow stat block as a base for your Illithid. Now, like I said, I don't want to talk about the Illithids and their creations, because that has almost been done to death. So much so that I'm pretty sure Orcus would come after me just because I would try to cover something that's been done to death. Okay, bad joke aside. Today I want to cover the Illithidae. These are species that are similar to the Illithids, but they were not created by the Illithids. They come from the same planet as the Mindflayers, and have very similar features. And they are what I want to cover today. Starting off with the Sausrid, or the Illithid hound. These things are awesome. Introduced in Dragon Magazine 150, just like the entire Illithidae that I'll be covering, they reproduce by inserting 1 to 3 larvae in a victim's body. And while these larvae grow, the adults stay guard. Now, it's not ceremorphosis. This is more like a maggot being deposited into a corpse. Now, unlike a maggot, the Sausrid larvae keep the corpse from decomposing, which is fairly interesting. The Sausrid bite deals an additional poison damage, and does have psionic abilities, including the ability to use Dimension Door. The Mindflayers actually use the Sausrid as, well, hunting hounds. In fact, these guys are pack hunters and are enemies to the gith hounds. That's right, the gith have their own hounds, which were introduced in Dragon Magazine 117. The Kolgrim, which are owned by the gith Yonkai, will attack Sausrids on sight regardless of their constraints, while the Sarkel, which were owned by the gith Sarai, actively attempt to avoid the Sausrids and can sense an approaching Sausrid from a mile away. Okay, quick pause real quick. Why in the world do we not have stat blocks for the Sausrid or the gith hounds? I would love to have these in a campaign. In fact, the gith hound would be a perfect animal companion for a gith Yonki or a gith Zerai ranger. This is just a missed opportunity, Wizards of the Coast. There needs to be a book that just covers the gith and the Mindflayers and heavily improves them. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Let's move on to the next Illithidae, which is the least impressive ones, the Imbrak. They reproduce very similar to the Sausrids by putting their own larvae into corpses and so on and so forth. The Imbrak are said to be ambush predators. They use illusions to disguise themselves, which is a good thing too, because these guys would stand out like a sore thumb. Well, they would stand out like an apple tree in a cherry orchard. The tentacles on the Imbrak cause paralysis, and they also have psionics, and their main two are invisibility and empathy. And it is said that they are intelligent enough to bargain with, so keep that in mind. Moving on to the Kigrids. In combat, they have a special ability to where if they hit with both of their forepaws, they can attack with their rear claws. Their bite attack can inflict a poison condition that causes painful swelling. Their psionics are levitation and invisibility. Interesting enough, these Kigrids are able to create simple traps. Most likely pitfalls or special tripwires, something like that. These things are cat-like, so I wouldn't expect too much from them. The final Illithidae I want to cover is the Saltor. The Saltor are akin to Mindflayers as baboons are to humans. So, no relation at all. They just have similar features and characteristics. For example, they reproduce in a similar way to Mindflayers. That's what it says in the Dragon magazine. They don't elaborate too much further, but I assume is the Saltor tadpoles. And they input them into various different creatures to get their race. Speaking of which, there are two different sub-races. The Argid, which are baboon-like in build, and the Gendrid, which have longer limbs and run faster on the ground, but a little slower in trees than the other Saltors. For psionics, they have different psionics depending on which one it is. And levitation is going to be their main one, but if there are any wild Saltors, you can expect to find domination, hypnotic pattern, dimension door, and astral projection. And yes, I did say wild Saltor, because Mindflayers use the Saltor as sort of like slave labor. At least that's what I remember from reading it. Now, interesting enough, according to the Dragon magazine, there is one more Illithidae, and we actually do have a stat block for it already. The Carrion Crawler. I'm sure that has changed since the Dragon magazine's release, but it's still very interesting to think about. Well, anyway, I've run out of time. I do hope you enjoyed. Until next time, viewers, this has been Drayhan, and I am offline.